in Zürich, Beyond Superintelligence. Dass ich das überhaupt sagen kann. Beyond Superintelligence. Mastering Future Challenges with Capitalism 2.0 and Democracy 2.0. Professor Helbing, the superintelligent floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yes, we've seen AlphaGo beat humans. And so the question is, after we have accomplished this task of, almost accomplished the task of building a superintelligent system, what will be the next big challenge? Well, actually, there are quite a few challenges. The problems of the world are complex. We are faced with financial, economic, and spending crisis. It's an unsolved problem. We're also seeing a lot of conflicts and wars in the world, also unsolved. Climate change is a challenge. And also, actually, the overuse of resources, so the lack of sustainability. And there are a number of challenges out there. And the question is, what is the best way to go about those challenges? Would big data fix the world? Within just 16 seconds, actually, we're sending about 700,000 Google queries, 500,000 Facebook posts. We go shopping, that creates data traces too. We move, and all of that accumulates to big data. Big data that's now the oil of the 21st century, creates enormous opportunities for the economy. And the question is, will it also solve the societal problems? So could we, if we just had enough data, could we know everything that's going on in the world? Could we see it in real time, and could we maybe even predict the future with all those data? And could we optimize the world? Could we rule it like a wise king? That's the kind of question that strategic thinkers in a number of countries are thinking about. They're building systems for this. And however, there are limitations, as it turns out, because this magic formula that we've always believed in, that more data is better. More data would mean more knowledge would mean more. Otherwise, the world wouldn't be in the state, in the situation that is actually in. And why is this? Well, let me show that more data does not necessarily mean more knowledge. In fact, the more data we have, the more spurious patterns and correlations we see. Look up in the sky and you believe to see patterns, but most of them are not meaningful from a physical point of view. Or look at that correlation showing the number of serial killers as a function of chocolate consumption. Now, if that would have a meaning, it would really be dangerous to live in Switzerland, but it's not, you know, and you can eat chocolate, don't worry, it will not turn you into a serial killer. So these kind of patterns are pretty misleading, and we need to be careful about them. Another thing is that we try to separate good and bad risk. Insurance companies are doing this, banks are doing this, and also secret services. They want to separate terrorists from good people, but it turns out that they're overlapping point clouds, and it's not so easy to separate good and bad risks. So for every terrorist which is out there, there are about 1,000 other peoples that end up on list of suspects, but they will never do anything very bad. So there are limitations to data analytics. Also, more knowledge does not necessarily mean more power. It turns out that some companies, such as Recorded Future, know quite a lot about us. They claim they're able to predict 90% of our behaviors, but on the other hand, that doesn't mean we can predict everything, because interaction changes everything. You would sometimes meet a person that changes your life, you fall in love, and everything is different. We know that very well, and the same thing applies actually to traffic, for example. So even though we can control cars pretty well, that doesn't mean that we could actually control the entire society. Even on the small scale, when it comes to these circular flows of traffic, we see that a phantom traffic jam occurs even though nobody wants this. So even though people have good technology and all the data that seems to be necessary and the very best intentions, things go wrong sometimes as a result of interactions. And we call the reason for this systemic instability. And these systemic instabilities actually cause a lot of the problems that we have in the world today, including overfishing and other tragedies of the commons. Here again, cooperation would be favorable, but it's unstable as the free traffic flow was unstable. We see instability of supply chains, and we see that even on a global scale, where we have booms and recessions of the world economy. We see crime as a result of unstable social dynamics, and also we see crowd disasters where people die, although nobody wants to harm anyone else. Conflicts are also often a result of social instabilities. Just think of divorces, but the same thing happens among countries, and revolutions too. So why are all those situations getting out of hand? Because of systemic instability. And in such kind of scenarios, a little local perturbation can actually mess up the entire system. That could be the entire world, in fact. And this is not just a funny experiment. These kind of things are actually happening in the real world, as we've seen during the financial crisis, where in the aftermath of the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, hundreds of banks failed. And that cost us hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And that's also why more power does not necessarily mean more success, as we've actually seen after September 11. The United States is certainly one of the most powerful countries, if not the most powerful country in the world, but still the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq didn't end as expected. Rather, what happened is that local tensions spread in the entire area, and now we have very serious problems in Syria and other countries. And as a result, we have terrorist threats all over the world. We have a refugee crisis. That means that is a cascading effect that extended over many years, and we haven't yet managed to stop it. So we need something better than just big data analytics. And the question is, would superintelligence fix the world? So we're seeing that there is an explosion actually of computational capacity every 18 months. It's doubling. That's Moore's law. And so within a couple of years or decades, experts expect actually that computers would surpass the capacity of humans. And in fact, we know that since many decades actually, computers are better chess players. They are better workers in many places. They're probably better drivers. They might be better doctors, thinking of IBM Watson, and actually also better in answering many questions, because they can oversee much more knowledge than we could ever read. So the question is, after the automation of production and the invention of self-driving cars, would the automation of society be next? So this is my recent book addressing that question. In fact, companies are thinking about this. For example, IBM Watson was proposed as US president. And also Google is working on reprogramming the state. They're trying to come up with an operating system for entire societies. So the question that comes up is, would society be run like a giant machine? Would it be feasible? Well, if we wanted to do that, then we would need to know what are all the different pieces that interact with each other, how do they work, and how can we manipulate them. And actually, governments are trying to do that, and companies too. And the keyword is deep learning. Deep learning is being used on data that has been collected about every one of us. Big data of personal information. And it's being used to find out what we do, why we do it, and what is basically the way to manipulate our opinions, our decisions, and our choices. And the keyword is personalized information. So whenever you Google, whenever you use Facebook, Twitter, or any recommender system, if you book hotels or flights, or also if you date a person, then you get personalized information. And this basically steers your attention and your decisions, your opinions, and your behavior. So are we getting into that kind of situation that our behavior, our lives is remotely controlled? And in fact, to some extent, this is happening already. You can see these kind of pictures and they're speaking for themselves. Now, this kind of concept is not only interesting for companies in the advertisement business, but also for governments, because governments want us to behave in a more healthy and environmental friendly way. And the keyword is nudging. And combined with all that personal data about us, it's called big nudging. Turns out, though, that this is not efficient enough to do the job. And so the question is, what would be next to make sure that we would behave in the way that companies or governments would like us to behave? And that brings us to the citizen score, which is already in the implementation process in China, where every citizen gets plus points or minus points for what they do and what they click in the internet, and also what their neighbors do and what their friends do. And that determines the kind of jobs that they can get, or also the countries that they can visit. Now, if we think that would turn our world into a data-driven paradise, I'm quite skeptical. And I see some skeptical faces here too. In fact, it turns out when it comes to the most livable cities in the world, none of them is located in any of those leading IT countries. And that has a reason, because this is not just a matter of optimization of one goal function. It's really about creating opportunities for many different kinds of people. And that means creating diversity. And so we need to realize that big nudging in citizen score is limited. They cannot do everything. In particular, they're not good at doing things that depend on interaction, such as family, friends, solidarity, social capital, culture, security, peace, financial stability, innovation, and jobs for all. In fact, we need to realize this graph over here. Yes, it's true, processing power is exponentially increasing, but the data volume is increasing even faster. Within just 1 year, we are producing as much data as in the entire history of humankind, so all the years before. And the gap between the data that is there and that we can process is increasing all the time. So we really need to know what is the data that we need to process. And we would often overlook important stuff because we are processing the wrong kind of data. Moreover, we're networking the world, and that creates combinatorial possibilities. The red curve is showing the explosion of systemic complexity, and we see that even though we have this tremendous amount of data, it's not suitable really to control the world and optimize it in a top-down way. On the contrary, we would be losing control if we tried to control the world in a top-down way. And if you look at the status of the world and about the discussion of the World Economic Forum this year, I think we can state that this is already happening. You know, we have lost control over many things. And so we need to have a new control paradigm. And fortunately, there is one, which is distributed control, that would support actually self-organization. So I'd like to say that our society is at a crossroad, we need to decide about the path that we want to take into the future. And in particular, we should remember Albert Einstein, who said, we cannot solve our problems with the same kind of thinking that created them. So we have now to think about the organizational principles of our future world, and that will work according to completely different rules. Now, fortunately, there is a new approach which is compatible with self-determination, with democracy, and free entrepreneurship, and that is distributed data storage and control. And we're working on this. And the keyword is NervousNet. NervousNet is an open and participatory platform that is opening up the Internet of Things for everyone. And in fact, it works like this. So currently, we're talking about a data-driven economy of the future, but most people don't have a lot of data that they can use to run businesses and services and all this. So why don't we produce our own data for everyone? And in fact, we can even use our smartphones for this, because they have about 15 sensors in them that can measure all sorts of things. Now, most people don't know about this. Most people don't use these sensors by intention, but we could actually connect to all those smartphones to build a global measurement system if we wanted. No, we citizens can do that. And in fact, what really matters is that we would have information systems that we can trust, right? It's not enough to collect data from our smartphones. We don't want to be spied on. We want to take self-determined responsible decisions. So informational self-determination is really important for us. So we give you all the control. You can decide what are the sensors that you want to open up, and you can decide whether you want to use these data for yourself, like for smart home applications, or whether you want to share these data. So it's your decision. And we think citizens should run this Internet of Things in the public space themselves. They should be in control, not a company or a government. Now, what could we do with this? NervousNet can do a lot of things for us. They could do real-time measurement, improve awareness of the situation we're in, can promote science, it can support self-organizing systems and collective intelligence. And in fact, now let's take this measurement of acceleration. The question, what can you do with it? Well, if a single smartphone starts shaking, that probably doesn't have an important meaning, but if all our smartphones would start shaking at the same time, then this would be an earthquake. When we wanted our friends and family to be warned, to get out in a safe place quickly. We can use our smartphone to map crisis and provide important information that helps to save people. We can create greater awareness, compasses for decision makers that could measure things that we can't see, we can't hear, we can't feel, such as social capital, which is very important for the economy and society. So, for example, reputation, trust, solidarity, all of that is important, should be protected, and can now be measured. We can map noise, we can map luminosity, we can map resources and who uses them. In fact, we have started to create an app for this called SwarmPulse. And here you can make geolocated measurements of noise or of light, but also send geolocated text messages. And that could be a link to a photograph or to a movie. And you can imagine that we would all together map, for example, this exhibition hall with all those photographs that we take. Or we map a city or a forest or an entire ecosystem and how it changes over time. We can do that in a crowdsourced way, and we should do it. But moreover, and that's even more interesting, we can create real-time feedback to support self-organization, and this way allow systems to behave in certain ways by themselves like magic, and we can apply this principle actually to coordination to our society on different levels, but it's a very different approach, because this is bottom-up. It's not telling everyone from the top down what everyone should do. This leaves freedom for entrepreneurship, new ideas, creativity, all that stuff that we really need for our future, right? And how to make self-organization work? Well, basically, the trick is to find the right kind of interactions to let the system self-organize towards certain kind of properties, structures, or functions that we would like to have. And so basically, computer simulations or interactive virtual worlds can help us to identify suitable interactions for this. Now, how to gain the data for the real-time feedback, NervousNet could do that for us. And then how to produce the feedbacks or the right kind of interaction, that would require a multidimensional incentive system, something like a new financial system, in fact, and also we're thinking about the implementation of this. Now, all of that can be used to improve systems. We can change the interactions between cars, for example, with driver assistance system in such a way that traffic jams will go away. So mechanism design is basically the trick, and we've done that also for urban spaces. We've come up with self-organized traffic light controls that are much better than the traffic light controls that we have today based on traffic centers. What we do is we let the traffic flows control the traffic lights rather than the other way around. And again, bottom up, it's much more efficient, also much better for the environment. And decentralized approaches also become more and more important for electrical systems, smart grids is the key word, and for Industry 4.0. Now we can, of course, extend the bottom-up principle to our society, and there the key word is collective intelligence. It's important to learn how to bring the knowledge and the best ideas of people together. And the fascinating thing is that it's not the best solution that wins. If you combine, say, the second, the third, and the fourth best solution with each other, it would be better than the best solution. So diversity wins, not the best. That is kind of the success principle of collective intelligence. And for this, we need to build online deliberation platforms that allow us to create that collective intelligence. That would be the basis of Democracy 2.0, the digital democracy. In fact, to enable people to take better decisions in a bottom-up way, we should build digital assistants that work on their behalf. So a good example is the driver assistance system. You know, you can turn it on and off, you choose the goal, and then the device gives you a number of different options to choose from, say to minimize greenhouse gases, for example, and then it supports you in reaching that goal in the best possible way. This is how artificial intelligence systems should work. They should work for us. We shouldn't be working for them, right? And in fact, we can build assistance systems for society, and reputation systems belong to them. We can build assistance systems that help us to increase situational awareness, to be more successful in interaction with others, and all these kind of things. And a very nice example is actually a real-time translation app that you can download to your smartphone. You can talk into your smartphone in one language, and it will be translated in real time into another language. So these digital assistants can overcome cultural barriers, and we can do that to a much larger extent. In fact, cultures are made up of thousands of success principles that in many cases we cannot spell out explicitly, but we could work on this and thereby learn how to combine those success principles in new ways with each other to come up with better solutions for the challenges that we're faced with. Now, the economy 4.0, how to create jobs and earn money in future. Well, here's one major challenge, the post-carbon economy. How can we produce all the stuff that we need with less oil and gas and coal? Well, part of that, of course, is to reduce the use of resources, reuse it, recycle it. And we need to learn this. We're not very good at that at the moment. We need to be much better. Now also information and knowledge production, of course, will be extremely important in this future digital society. Creative work will play a much greater role because everything else can be done by algorithms, by robots, by machine intelligence. For this, and we will come up with personalized products, so a much larger variety of products. And we'll produce many things at home. Actually, we can establish our own businesses and sell our stuff worldwide now. It's easier than ever. It's also important that we learn network thinking, systemic thinking. So that will really be at the core of what's happening in the future. And we need to think in terms of the sharing economy. That's also part of using resources better and creating higher standards of living for more people with less resources. Now, due to the automation, 50% of today's jobs will be gone soon. So rationalization will go on and we'll have to reinvent half of our economy. And that will be the digital economy. The digital economy works in a very different way, as I will illustrate in a few minutes. And co-creation is really at the core. It's important that we realize that we should learn to open up systems, to engage in interoperability, because then we can combine existing services and products to build new services and products and thereby foster exponential innovation and create all the jobs that we'll need in the future. If we don't do that, I think we'll have mass unemployment, so it's really crucial that we engage into this paradigm. And another thing that we need to do is to improve the financial system. We know that very well. It's not working as it should be working, but there is really an enormous opportunity out there, because in a digital world, we are not engaged in a zero-sum game. If I want to have more information, I don't have to take it away from others. You know, we can multiply information as often as we like. We can use it in many different ways. So there are almost unlimited opportunities out there. This is very different from the material world. We don't need to engage in conflict over this. Sharing information often makes it more valuable, right? So the question is how to get from this situation, like a digital desert where there are a few giants like Apple and Google and Amazon, Facebook and so on, and a lot of people and companies that have very little data, towards that kind of situation of a digital rainforest where there's abundance of information and opportunities for everyone. And also, the biggest trees are bigger than those palm trees that we've seen before. I mean, this is better for everyone, right? So how do we get there? And so we need to create the equivalence of water that is evaporating and allows this digital rainforest to grow. So the main point is create money in a bottom-up way. Open up money creation towards everyone. And of course, the tricky thing is how to do that. We've seen that central banks around the world, the Fed, the ECB, and so on, have pumped trillions of money into the system to reboot the economy. It hasn't worked. So the top-down approach towards creation of money is not doing the job it should be doing. We need to have a new approach. That means bottom-up creation of money, and it can be done. As Bitcoin has shown. Before, you had to be rich to buy gold, but now Bitcoin has shown you can create gold or equivalent of gold from bits and bytes. So we can now build a system. Bitcoin is not the end. We need to have a multidimensional incentive system. We need to a bottom-up creation that also considers all the externalities, the external effects of interactions between companies, environment, people and companies, people, and so on, to create this circular and thriving economy that we want. So, summarize, if we go on as before, we may end up in disaster. characterized by loss of democracy and freedom, mass unemployment, financial and economic collapse, resource shortages, serious climate change, global war. And superintelligence will help us in many things, but I don't think it will solve all these problems. But a digitally upgraded socioeconomic system may. We are in a situation where we really need new paradigms, and that doesn't stop in front of the financial and economic system. Everything needs to be upgraded. We need to realize this. And actually, it wouldn't be bad, because if we marry capitalism and democracy with digital technologies that it becomes now available, including the Internet of Things, we can build a decentralized information innovation production and service ecosystem, and we can create opportunities for everyone, and this circular and sharing economy that we need to solve our resource problems. So the future that I imagine would be a networked, well-coordinated, distributed system of largely autonomous systems. And let's do this together. Thank you very much.
Professor, thank you very much. I am so sorry I couldn't watch everything, but the live stream, you can be sure I'll watch it at home once I'm off here. Please stay on the stage. We're going on. No time for questions anymore, but I'm sure you can find the professor just behind for personal questions. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for your super intelligence.